There are fates in the Imperium worse than death, and few are more dreadful, more holy, or more necessary than being offered to the Emperor himself. Imagine the darkness of the void pressing at the edges of your mind, the weight of a billion voices screaming in terror across the warp, and at the center of it all, your body trembling on cold stone as incense coils in the air. You are not being executed nor punished. You are being exalted, transfigured into fuel for a god who can no longer speak, a throne of golden ruin that must devour ceaselessly to preserve the light of humanity. Some go willingly, others broken by fear, but all end the same, a breath stolen from their chest, their soul stripped away and cast into a fire that never dies. This is not myth nor metaphor. It is the living reality for thousands every single day on Terra. The Astronomicon blazes, guiding fleets across a galaxy of endless night, but that beacon burns because lives like yours are extinguished. If you find yourself drawn into this shadowed truth of the 41st millennium, where devotion is indistinguishable from damnation, then stay with us until the end. The stories we explore here survive because you carry them forward. Like, share, and subscribe, so that this tale of sacrifice will not vanish into silence, but echo louder than the endless void. The road to sacrifice begins long before a name is ever spoken by a priest or a writ of doom is pressed into wax. For many, it begins with a knock on a hab door, the sudden shadow of enforcers in black carapace armor, the vox grill bark of an order that brooks no resistance. Others are chosen as children, pulled from their mother's arms by administratum clerks whose eyes never rise from their data slates. Some come believing it is pilgrimage, that the great honor of feeding the master of mankind will carry their soul upward into eternal union. And yet, however it begins, it ends in the same place, the great artery that wends its way into the heart of the Imperial palace on Terra. The air is heavy long before the gates appear. Pilgrims shuffle forward, pressed shoulder to shoulder, thousands upon thousands herded through colossal archways beneath banners, so ancient their colors are little more than shadow. The aquila spreads across marble walls, carved in such immensity that its wings vanish into the haze of incense. Every surface speaks of devotion, but the silence is stronger than the hymns. Whispers are smothered beneath the weight of it. It is the silence of inevitability, of the end that none can turn away from. Among the crowds, eyes flick upward to the figures who guard every passage. Custodians stand motionless, their auramite armor blazing even in the dim haze, their guardian spears resting lightly in hands that could sever a man with a single motion. To look upon them is to feel the futility of resistance. No one dares to question the path they walk. No one dares to turn back. It is said in the hives of Terra that even the thought of rebellion dies in the shadow of the palace. Here one knows why. The procession winds through halls so vast they resemble cityscapes enclosed in stone. Torchlight burns in endless rows, casting reflections across statues of saints and martyrs, their eyes blindfolded, their mouths sealed with iron. The symbolism is clear. To serve is to suffer is to be silent. Only those who serve may pass. Feet shuffle over flagstones worn smooth by centuries of sacrifice, the sound like a river of cloth and bone flowing toward a single abyss. Some fall before ever reaching the inner gates. Bodies weakened by starvation or madness collapse in heaps, dragged away by silent servitors whose hands are iron claws. The crowd never stops. There is no pause, no time to mourn. Every opening closes instantly as more are pressed forward, faces hollow, lips cracked from chanting or from thirst. Their voices rise occasionally in fractured hymns, words blurring together until even the syllables sound less like prayer than like the moan of cattle driven toward the blade. Inside the first sanctum, the air changes. The weight of the void presses down, though none can name why. It is here that the priests of the Adeptus Ministorum appear in full regalia, swinging censers that belch black smoke thick enough to sting the eyes. Their chants boom across voxcasters hidden in the walls, words of exultation and command. They speak of glory, of honor, of becoming one with the Emperor's eternal light. But beneath the grandeur, every pilgrim feels the truth. They are not ascending, they are descending, each step falling deeper into silence, each breath stolen by the ritual that surrounds them. At the threshold of the inner gates, names are stripped away. Acolytes approach with ink-stained hands, branding runes of purity upon foreheads and burning away identity in the process. No family, no history, no voice, only offering. A man may have been a merchant, a soldier, a scholar, a heretic redeemed by last confession. It matters nothing now. He is nameless, she is nameless. All are reduced to fuel. Some weep as the gates open. Some sing louder, their throats raw, desperate to drown fear in devotion. Others are silent, their eyes fixed upon the golden radiance that leaks like fire through the cracks of the colossal doors. That light is not the warmth of salvation. It is hunger, pure and eternal, and it reaches for them as surely as the grave. And so the descent begins. The gates of the sanctum swing open with a groan that shakes the marrow of every soul pressed inside. Beyond them lies not a temple nor the vision of heaven promised in the sermons, but an abyss of stone and shadow that seems to devour light itself. The scale of the chamber defies comprehension. Vaults rise higher than any cathedral spire, so vast that the torchlight dwindles into insignificance before it ever reaches the domed ceiling. Carved into the walls are bas-reliefs of the Emperor triumphant, locked in poses of conquest, his sword raised, his hand outstretched. Yet the faces of the pilgrims are drawn not to those victories of a bygone age, but to the endless processional staircases spiraling downward into the earth. The air here is colder, heavy with moisture that drips from unseen heights. Each drop strikes stone with a sound amplified by silence until it echoes like the toll of a bell. The descent is literal now, thousands shuffled into spirals, feet stumbling on steps worn shallow by centuries of sacrifice. Every turn hides the next, and it is easy to lose all sense of time and direction. To many it feels as though they have already crossed into death. The priests walk among them, voices amplified, their words thunderous yet strangely hollow. They speak of the Emperor's eternal gaze, of the honor of becoming his sustenance, of how the soul will be purged of sin in the instant it is consumed. Some believe. They fall to their knees in ecstasy, clawing at their own flesh in an effort to bleed before reaching the altar, desperate to give more. Others tremble, clutching their robes, whispering prayers into clenched fists. And others still stare blankly, all meaning stripped from them by the sheer enormity of what awaits. Custodians descend as well, their armor gleaming in the dim light like fragments of the sun buried underground. They speak no words, they need none. Their mere presence enforces a silence heavier than any sermon. There is no hope of fleeing past them. Even the thought of such folly dies beneath their watch. One glance from their helmed visages is enough to remind all who walk here that they tread on ground where rebellion has never been and never will be. As the pilgrims descend deeper, the incense thickens until the air tastes of ash. Fires gutter in braziers carved into the walls, spewing smoke that clings to the lungs and stings the eyes. Breathing itself becomes labor, and yet the voices of the priests demand louder chants, higher cries, hymns that rise against the suffocating dark. The chants merge with the sounds of chains clinking, of doors slamming shut above, sealing away the upper world. Step by step, breath by breath, the crowd is stripped of air, of freedom, of light. There comes a point in the descent when silence conquers even the hymns. It is not ordered, nor spoken of, but it spreads through the pilgrims like a contagion. The voices falter, one by one, until only the priests are heard. And then, at last, even the priests fall silent. For ahead lies the first glimpse of the throne's domain, and no mortal throat dares to fill the air before its presence. The stone stair ends upon a plane of iron, a floor that stretches outward into darkness, interrupted only by the faint gleam of conduits running like veins beneath the surface. The faint hum of energy fills the ears, low and endless, a sound that is neither mechanical nor natural, but something in between. It is the sound of eternity feeding. The pilgrims falter here. Some collapse entirely, their knees buckling beneath a weight they cannot name. The priests strike them, dragging them forward, refusing to allow hesitation. Hesitation is weakness. Hesitation is sin. To falter is to insult the emperor himself, and the punishment for such insult is to be cast aside as unworthy, a fate feared more than death. For to die unconsumed is to vanish, nameless and purposeless, outside the radiance of the master of mankind. The air vibrates as if a storm rages just beyond the chamber's veil, static prickles across skin, hairs rising on arms and necks. Those with even a spark of psychic sensitivity whimper, clutching their heads as phantom voices scream within. They feel the throne long before they see it. They feel the hunger of a god that does not speak, does not look, but devours nonetheless. And still the line shuffles forward. One step, then another, the silence complete now, each pilgrim alone with their dread. For beyond this chamber lies the first true boundary, the threshold of offering. The threshold stands like a wound in the world, massive gates of black adamantium tower, above the gathered pilgrims, etched with litanies so ancient their words are no longer spoken in any tongue, outside the high ecclesiarchal rites. Each letter glows faintly, as if fire smolders beneath the metal, and the air around the inscriptions hums with restrained energy. The gates do not open swiftly but crawl apart with an exhalation of heat, as though the very breath of the throne itself leaks outward. Those nearest stagger back, shielding their faces from the wave of scorching air, but the custodians drive them forward with silent gestures, their guardian spears gleaming with menace. Beyond the gates lies a cavernous chamber that stretches into infinity. Its walls are swallowed by shadow, yet the floor is a lattice of golden conduits, pulsing faintly with light that flows like lifeblood toward some hidden heart. The air here is oppressive. Every inhalation feels heavier, as though unseen hands squeeze the lungs. For many, this is the moment when courage fractures. Some break from the line entirely, thrashing, screaming prayers for mercy, clawing at their neighbors as if dragging another down might delay their own fate. The priests are merciless. Chains are tightened, lashes fall, and those who resist are silenced with blades that pierce swiftly beneath ribs. Even in death, their bodies are dragged forward. Nothing is wasted. In the center of the chamber stands the choir, hundreds, perhaps thousands, arranged in vast tiers of stone rising upward like the seats of a colosseum. Each is robed in crimson, their faces pale and hollow-eyed, their mouths open in ceaseless chant. The sound they make is no melody, no harmony, but a droning wall of psychic resonance that vibrates inside the skull. It is a song of suffering, a dirge without end, binding their minds together into one lattice of power. The Astronomicon burns through their voices, and the pilgrims feel its touch like a blade across the soul. Among them, the chosen sacrifice trembles. Perhaps they once imagined their death as quick, noble, their soul lifted into light. Now they see the truth. There is no gentle passage, no moment of peace. The sacrifice is a tearing, a rending of the spirit into threads that burn until nothing remains but silence. And yet the priests' voices rise above the choir, thundering declarations that this pain is holy, that this dissolution is union. They proclaim the Emperor's hunger as a mercy, for it spares humanity the horrors of the warp. The words echo across the chamber, but for those walking the line, they are ashes. The procession halts at the brink of the offering platform. It is a dais of black stone, inlaid with golden sigils that pulse faintly in rhythm with the conduits beneath the floor. The air here is sharper, tasting of iron and ozone, thick with the scent of burning oil from braziers that never gutter. The priests begin their invocations, and the chosen are separated from the masses. They are led by chains to the center, where their arms are bound in iron, their faces lifted toward a light that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere. And it is in this moment that silence becomes unbearable. For in the distance, beyond walls no eye can pierce, there is a sound. It is not voice, not song, but something vaster, a pulse of thought, of hunger, of will. It rolls across the chamber like thunder, and every pilgrim feels it deep within their marrow. Some weep openly, some laugh in hysteria, others simply collapse, their minds broken by the realization that they are prey, not guests, and that the God they serve devours without pause. The priests raise their censers, filling the chamber with choking smoke. The custodians stand immobile, their visages like statues of judgment. The choir screams its endless chant, louder, harder, until the very stones seem to tremble. And there, on the edge of the dais, the chosen look into the light and know that silence is about to claim them forever. The descent is complete. What follows is surrender. The chosen stand upon the dais like figures already carved into their own tombstones. Chains rattle as priests force them to their knees, their bodies bent low before the invisible radiance that emanates from beyond the chamber's veils. The light is not steady. It flickers like a fire stoked by unseen hands, growing brighter as the sacrifices are arranged in rows. Each breath feels thinner now, each heartbeat louder. The moment hangs like a blade above the neck, suspended by ritual and inevitability. The priests chant in unison, their voices merging with the droning roar of the psychic choir. Words older than Imperial law resound, syllables that have not been heard beyond Terra since the age of strife. The meaning is lost to most ears, but the intent is undeniable: surrender, dissolve, fuel. The smell of incense grows acrid, mixing with the copper tang of blood, as acolytes cut shallow lines into the flesh of each chosen, marking their bodies with symbols of offering. The blood runs across the black stone, filling carved channels that glow faintly as the ichor spreads. It is here that the silence deepens into something far greater than the absence of sound. Minds begin to unravel as the throne stirs. The psychic choir's song twists into a scream that has no beginning and no end, each voice stretched until it shatters. The chosen feel their thoughts slipping, memories burning away as if set aflame from within. Faces of loved ones blur, names disintegrate, even the shape of their own self dissolves into smoke. They clutch at what they can, a single fragment, a word, a memory of sunlight on skin. Yet the hunger takes it all. The custodians do not move. They are witnesses only, silent guardians of a ritual they neither question nor halt. Their presence is both terror and comfort. For though the chosen die nameless, they die watched by the Emperor's most faithful. To fall beneath their gaze is to vanish into history itself. When the priests give the final cry, the chamber seems to convulse. A wave of heat rolls outward, pressing against every body, scalding the air from the lungs. The conduits in the floor blaze with golden fire, and the blood of the sacrifices ignites in a halo of light. The chosen scream, but their voices are snuffed almost instantly, not by blades or flame, but by something far more absolute. The throne devours. Flesh withers, souls are torn free in violent rupture, and in the blink of an eye, those who stood upon the dais are gone, erased so completely that even the echo of their lives is consumed. The choir staggers, some collapsing, their minds overloaded by the psychic torrent they have bridged. Priests raise their hands in exultation, proclaiming the emperor fed, the Astronomicon secured for another day. The crowd behind the dais weeps, prays, or stares with hollow terror, for they know their turn will come, if not this hour, then another. The procession does not end. It never ends. And in the silence that follows, broken only by the faint hum of conduits and the ragged breathing of the living, one truth hangs in the air heavier than incense. The descent is not into death, but into a silence that is eternal. The chosen are gone, but their dissolution fuels the flame by which mankind survives. The gates at the far end of the chamber creak open. More pilgrims are ushered forward. The cycle begins anew. And so the descent into silence does not close here. It flows endlessly, a river of souls pouring into the dark, each drop extinguished to keep the stars themselves alight. If the first descent strips away identity, the second reveals the truth of scale. Beyond the chamber of sacrifice lies a labyrinth of machinery, so vast it blurs the line between temple and engine. The golden throne is not fed by a single altar, nor by a single choir of psychers. It is a system, a lattice of endless chambers carved beneath the Imperial palace, where flesh and spirit are reduced to fuel, where prayer and circuitry are woven together into an unbroken cycle of consumption. The pilgrims who survive their first glimpse of sacrifice are herded deeper into these catacombs, though most will not emerge again. The walls here are plated with bronze and iron, etched with sacred litanies and crowned with cherubs of marble, their wings chipped and their faces worn smooth by centuries of smoke. The floors tremble faintly beneath their feet, each vibration a reminder that power flows constantly through conduits thicker than hive spires. The sound is relentless, the clank of chains, the groan of pistons, the low hum of energy that never ceases. To step here is to feel that the palace itself is alive, breathing through vents of steam, sighing through the shifting of its foundations. Servitors move in endless ranks through the corridors, their bodies half flesh, half machine, stripped of will, reduced to function. Some carry the husks of the consumed, dragging them by chains toward furnaces that glow with promethium fire. Others wheel carts laden with incense, their mechanical arms swinging censers rhythmically as they shuffle forward on legs of steel. Their vox grills leak static hymns, fragments of prayer recorded long before their humanity was erased. For those watching, it is difficult to tell where the ritual ends and the machinery begins. Everything here is both. The tech priests of Mars oversee these halls. Their robes of red are blackened with soot, their mechanical limbs twitching as they adjust conduits, recalibrate engines, or replace burned-out husks of servitors. Their voices are dry, mechanical chants, praising the Omnissiah with every motion. Where the priests of the Ministorum speak of souls and salvation, the adepts of Mars speak only of power, output, and continuity of flow. And yet both are needed, for the Golden Throne is both relic and reactor, god machine and coffin. Without the Ministorum, the sacrifices would falter. Without the Mechanicus, the machinery would fail. It is here that the truth of scale begins to dawn. For every line of pilgrims one sees, there are dozens more hidden in adjoining halls. For every choir of psychers that screams their minds raw in one chamber, there are hundreds elsewhere, chained to their places, their lives measured not in years but in days until their psyches collapse. Thousands feed the throne daily, tens of thousands each week, and still the hunger never ends. The Astronomicon burns brighter than any star, but that fire devours without pause, without mercy. Among the pilgrims, whispers spread like sparks. Some believe the Emperor feels each soul as it is consumed, that he acknowledges their offering in silence. Others mutter that nothing remains, that the throne is not a god's mouth but a pit, swallowing everything without trace. None know the truth, and the custodians who guard these halls will not answer. Their silence is absolute, their vigilance eternal. As the crowd shuffles onward deeper into the arteries of this living tomb, the smell grows stronger, incense, sweat, promethium, and beneath it all the copper tang of blood. It seeps from beneath doors, from grates in the floor, from channels carved to guide it toward unseen reservoirs. The pilgrims cover their mouths, but there is no escaping it. To breathe here is to inhale sacrifice itself. And still they march, each step carrying them deeper into the machine that is faith. The further one walks, the less the palace resembles a temple at all. The stone arches give way to vaults of metal and wire, conduits dangling like veins exposed to the air, their insulation cracked and leaking sparks that dance across the floor. The light is harsher here, not from braziers or candles, but from lumen strips that flicker endlessly, casting the pilgrims' faces into stark relief. Every shadow seems alive, twitching in time with the stutter of failing bulbs. Ahead rises a chamber vast enough to swallow entire cathedrals. Its ceiling vanishes into darkness, but its floor is filled with rows upon rows of thrones, crude iron seats chained to the ground, each fitted with restraints and crowned with arrays of needles and copper filaments. The air vibrates with the psychic residue of thousands who once sat upon them, their screams etched permanently into the very stone. These are the choir stalls, the places where psychers are bound together into living instruments, their combined essence harnessed to feed the Astronomicon. Some of the pilgrims realize, with dawning horror, that they will not be given the mercy of instant consumption upon the dais. Instead, they will be seated in these thrones, bound hand and foot, their minds forced open and lashed together with others until they are nothing but strands in a greater web. To serve in the choir is not a single death, but 1,000 drawn out until the body burns and the soul fractures into dust. The priests call it a privilege. The silence of those already seated calls it torment. The tech priests shuffle between the rows, their mechadendrites hissing as they inject fluids into wasted bodies or solder fraying connections back into scorched flesh. For them, there is no difference between a cable and a vein. A broken body is a component to be replaced, adjusted, or discarded. Their litanies to the Omnissiah blend with the hollow hymns of the Ministorum priests, until the chamber echoes with a fusion of faith and machine, devotion and necessity. When the next group of psychers is dragged forward, the process is swift. Chains clatter, iron clamps snap shut, needles pierce temples and chests, screams rise, but the choir drowns them out, a constant wall of sound that bends the air itself. The priests begin their chants anew, voices booming through voxcasters, into his light, into his hunger, into his glory. The words hammer against the ears until thought itself becomes difficult. For those watching, terror and awe intertwine. And then the thrones activate. Light courses through the copper wires, crawling down into flesh, igniting the air with a shimmering haze visible only to the half-sighted. The psychers thrash, their eyes burning with unnatural fire, their mouths open in screams that are swallowed by the chant. The energy rises, building into a crescendo that shakes the chamber. And then, silence. A silence that is not empty but full, vibrating with the raw presence of the warp. In that instant, the Astronomicon flares brighter than before, its beacon stretching across the galaxy, guiding ships through the tides of madness. The psychers slump back in their restraints, smoke curling from their mouths, their chests heaving as if each breath might be the last. Some die instantly, their bodies collapsing into husks. Others linger, their eyes glazed, their minds already broken. Yet the machinery does not pause. More are dragged forward, more seats filled, the cycle continuing without end. The pilgrims watching know now that they are not merely witnesses, they are inventory. Their lives are counted not in years or deeds, but in how much light they can lend to the throne before they burn out. They march on, each step heavier, as the realization settles like stone upon their hearts. They are no longer people, they are fuel. The corridors that follow the choir stalls seem narrower, though they are still vast enough to house armies. Perhaps it is the weight of the realization pressing down on every soul, the truth that there is no path back to the surface. The walls sweat with condensation, trickling down pipes that throb faintly with the passage of fluid and energy alike. The air is warmer here, tainted by the reek of burning flesh, carried from unseen furnaces. The smell seeps into hair, into skin, until pilgrims can no longer tell where their bodies end and the palace begins. At intervals they pass the furnaces themselves. Great iron mouths lined with blackened teeth of steel, their interiors glowing with a Promethean blaze that roars like a beast. Servitors dump corpses into them without ceremony, bodies of failed psychers, broken sacrifices, even those who resisted too violently and were cut down by priests or custodians. Each cadaver is reduced to ash within seconds, the flames hungry, insatiable, and yet this is not desecration but ritual. The priests chant even here, their voices declaring the fire is cleansing, the smoke is holy, every fragment of the dead is used, even their ashes spread into oils that will anoint future offerings. The pilgrims stumble past, many gagging, some collapsing as the heat and stench overwhelm them. No hand reaches to help. Compassion has no place here, only function, only forward. The line cannot break. The machinery cannot stop. Further still, they come upon chambers where the living are prepared. Slabs of black marble line the walls, each fitted with manacles and etched with sigils that glimmer faintly in the dim light. The chosen are strapped down while acolytes and tech priests alike work over them. Skin is carved with runes, blood is drained into channels, needles are inserted into veins to pump sedatives or stimulants depending on the need. For some, their final death will be swift upon the dais. For others, their fate is to be bound into the choir, their minds lashed open until they unravel. No one knows which awaits them until the moment the chains tighten around their wrists. The sound in these chambers is constant, the rasp of knives on flesh, the bubbling hiss of chemical injectors, the low drone of prayers that never end. For the chosen strapped to the slabs, time dissolves into a blur of pain and dread. Hours feel like days, days like eternity, until the gates open and they are dragged onward again. It is here, in these preparation halls, that the machinery of faith is most apparent. The process is not chaotic, not improvised. It is systemized, perfected, unbroken for 10,000 years. Every act of pain, every drop of blood, every scream is part of a rhythm that sustains the Imperium itself. To those who serve it, this is not cruelty but order, not murder but offering. To question it is to invite damnation. The pilgrims watch in silence, their eyes wide, their throats tight. They understand now that the machinery does not care for them as individuals. It has no memory, no sorrow. It does not distinguish between sinner or saint, heretic or penitent. It demands only that the cycle continue, that the throne remain fed. And so they shuffle on deeper into the labyrinth, each step carrying them closer to the moment when machinery and ritual will claim them in full. The air thickens as the pilgrims reach the heart of the preparation halls. Great bronze doors, scarred with burn marks and etched with the double-headed aquila, loom ahead. When they open, the sound that pours out is unlike anything that came before. It is not the measured chants of priests, nor the muttered prayers of pilgrims. It is a single, endless scream stretched into something more than human. A psychic wail that gnaws at the mind, rattling teeth in their sockets, searing through bone like a hot blade. The source is revealed beyond the threshold. Rows of psychers lie chained in vast amphitheaters of stone and iron, their bodies suspended in manacles that keep their limbs splayed. Their skulls are capped with brass circlets from which copper wires descend, feeding into engines that glow with faint, malignant light. Their mouths hang open in ceaseless howls, eyes rolled white, their voices amplified and drawn out by machinery until they merge into a single chorus. The sound is not heard with the ears alone. It presses into the brain, gnaws at the marrow, vibrates the very soul. Acolytes move among them, feeding tubes into their mouths, injecting fluids to prolong their agony, adjusting the dials that control their restraints. The priests stand upon balconies, arms raised, their chants harmonizing with the suffering below. They call it the echo of faith, the hymn that seeps upward through the stone, drifting ever closer to the throne itself. The pilgrims stumble past the sight, many covering their ears, though it does little to shield them. Some weep openly, others whisper prayers, and a few collapse foaming at the mouth as their fragile minds crack beneath the psychic resonance. Those who cannot rise again are dragged away by servitors, their fate sealed before their time. Yet even as the pilgrims tremble, the priests proclaim the truth. This is proof of the Emperor's will. For only through this constant flow of suffering can the Imperium endure. The screams become liturgy, the agony becomes devotion. Flesh, blood, and soul are nothing but raw material for the great machinery of survival. The pilgrims are herded further still until the howling fades into a dull hum behind them. Silence does not follow, for silence can never exist in the palace. Instead, it is replaced by the hiss of incense, the thud of heavy chains, the murmur of prayers muttered by the exhausted. They move on, their eyes hollow, their bodies trembling, yet there is no choice but forward. For they are now part of the machine, cogs caught in gears that grind endlessly, without pause or mercy. And as the last of them shuffle through the narrowing passageways, one truth becomes undeniable: there is no turning back. The machinery of faith does not release its offerings, it only consumes. After the screams of the preparation halls, the sudden stillness feels like a blade against the skin. The pilgrims descend into corridors so deep that the air grows heavy, each breath thick as if drawn through wet cloth. The walls here are smooth, seamless black stone cut so precisely that no chisel mark remains. It is said that these lower arteries were carved not by mortal hands, but by devices long since dismantled, machines too sacred or too dangerous to survive beyond the palace. Here silence reigns. No chanting priests, no bellowing flames, no clatter of servitors. Only the sound of footsteps on stone, the scrape of chains, the soft whimper of those who dare let sound escape their throats. Yet even those noises feel unwelcome, smothered as if the walls themselves are listening. For this is a place where voices are not permitted to intrude. To speak here is to risk drawing notice from powers one cannot see, nor wish to meet. The custodians who escort the line of pilgrims change their bearing as well. Where once they strode with visible authority, here they move slower, their halberds angled with more caution. They do not speak, do not signal, but their watchfulness is sharper, their gold-engraved armor glinting like beacons in the dim half-light. Their presence is not just guardianship now, it is warning. The pilgrims begin to sense it too. Something vast presses in on them, a weight not of stone but of expectation. The silence is not absence, it is presence. It is a presence that hums just beyond hearing, as if a choir of invisible voices whispers in tones too deep for mortal ears. Some pilgrims clutch their heads as if to push the sound out. Others fold their hands tighter, knuckles whitening, whispering prayers in breaths too faint to carry. The silence is not neutral, it is judgment. And with every step deeper into the underways of the palace, the pilgrims come to understand that their suffering is not only flesh and blood, it is the surrender of their voice. Their very ability to declare themselves human. In silence, they are erased. In silence, they are offered. The passage narrows further until the pilgrims march single file, pressed shoulder to shoulder in the dim light. The torches that once burned in braziers vanish, replaced by faint strips of lumens set into the floor, guiding the path like a river of pale fire. Shadows stretch impossibly long, bending and distorting the human form until every man and woman sees not themselves but something alien projected across the walls. The silence deepens, and with it, a slow realization creeps into their minds. They are walking not into darkness, but into absence. For in this place, sound itself is devoured. A cough dies the moment it is born. A whispered prayer never reaches the ears of its speaker. Even the heavy footfalls of boots are reduced to little more than a tremor. It is as though the walls are hungry, consuming all noise with a greed that borders on the supernatural. And if sound can be swallowed whole, what of thought? What of soul? Some pilgrims begin to tremble, certain that even their inner voices are being leached away, drained into the stones themselves. The custodians continue to lead, silent, unreadable, though their halberds now glow faintly along the haft, as though the weapons themselves resist the pall of this place. Servitors march behind, pistons sighing softly, the only noise that dares to exist here. The pilgrims are caught between the two, trapped in a corridor where time has no measure. No one knows if hours or days pass, for there is no rhythm, no marker, nothing but the endless procession forward. Occasionally, alcoves open in the walls, and within them lie remnants of earlier sacrifices. Desiccated husks, their mouths frozen open in unheard screams, their bones etched with faint scorch marks, as though they had been burned from the inside. They are left unburied, untouched, displayed as warnings or perhaps offerings themselves. The sight empties whatever courage remains in the hearts of the living. To die in silence is one thing. To vanish so completely that even one's death cry is denied feels like a horror too great to name. And yet some pilgrims bow to these corpses, lowering their heads as they pass, for they see in the hollowed forms a reflection of their own inevitable fate. They do not pray for salvation anymore. They pray to be strong enough to endure, to give without resistance, to be worthy of the silence that waits for them all. The further the line of pilgrims descends, the more oppressive the silence becomes. It presses against skulls like iron bands, squeezing thought into fragments, reducing memory into haze. Some forget their own names, others lose track of why they even came. They stumble onward, hollow-eyed, carried forward not by will but by the unyielding pull of inevitability. To fall here is to be left behind, and to be left behind is to vanish without trace, swallowed into the hungry dark. The custodians march ahead unflinching, yet even their presence is altered. Their auric armor, which once seemed to blaze with divine radiance, now looks dimmed, its golden sheen muted under the pall of silence. Still they endure, unbent, and the pilgrims cling to that sight as the last fragment of reassurance. For if even the emperor's chosen hesitate here, then what hope could mere mortals have? A great hall opens suddenly before them, its scale so vast that the eye cannot measure its farthest wall. No torches burn within, no lumens flicker along the floor. It is lit instead by a faint ambient glow that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The ceiling disappears into gloom, and the pilgrims feel as though they are insects crawling upon the floor of some forgotten god. Here the silence changes. It is no longer merely absence, but expectation. The pilgrims feel it as a weight upon their shoulders, a pressure against their lungs. Some fall to their knees without knowing why, others prostrate themselves fully, faces pressed against the cold stone. It is as though something vast and unseen leans close to listen, waiting not for words but for surrender. At the center of the hall stands a single dais of black marble, carved with grooves that channel inward like rivers to a hollow basin. It is empty now, but the pilgrims understand instinctively what it is for. Blood has filled it countless times before, pooling there until the stone itself remembers the taste. The grooves gleam faintly as if stained beyond cleansing, a permanent mark of offerings past. One by one, the pilgrims are guided across the hall, their footsteps swallowed before they can echo. They pass the dais in silence, none daring to touch it, though their eyes are drawn to it as if compelled. Each feels in that moment that they are being measured, not as individuals but as part of a tide, a stream of flesh flowing endlessly into the throne's hunger. The silence becomes their judge, and judgment is always the same. The hall ends in another narrowing corridor, drawing them onward once more. But as they pass through its mouth, the silence lingers behind them like a shadow, clinging to their thoughts, settling into their marrow. It will never leave them. For once one has walked through the halls of absence, one carries that absence forever. The corridor beyond the great hall twists downward in long spiraling arcs, each step carrying the pilgrims further into shadow. Here even the faint lumens vanish, replaced by darkness so complete it swallows sight. The only light comes from the faint glow of the custodians' weapons, pale arcs of energy shimmering along their blades. That faint radiance is enough to reveal faces drained of all color, eyes staring blindly ahead. Without sight or sound, the mind begins to betray itself. Some pilgrims see shapes in the dark, silhouettes that linger just beyond the reach of the custodian's glow. A hand brushing a shoulder, a face glimpsed in the void, none of it real, and yet each phantom carries the weight of truth. For in the silence, what difference is there between imagination and reality? Others hear voices in the dark, though no sound exists. They hear their mothers calling, their children laughing, their enemies cursing. The silence does not only erase, it reflects. It digs into memory, pulls fragments of the soul into forms that cannot be ignored. A woman screams suddenly, breaking the sacred stillness. Her cry is raw, jagged, filled with terror at something only she can see. In an instant one of the custodians turns, his halberd flashing. The blade does not strike her flesh. It strikes the ground beside her, a crackling arc of energy bursting against the stone. The warning is clear. No more sound, no more weakness. She collapses to her knees, hands clasped over her mouth, eyes streaming, but she dares not cry again. The line moves on, and with every step, the silence hardens into something greater than absence. It becomes law, as binding as chains, as permanent as death. In this place, silence is worship. To defy it is to invite destruction. To submit to it is to become part of the offering. When at last they emerge into light again, it is not relief they feel but dread. For the glow is not that of torches or engines, but of the psychic flame, a radiance that pulses through the air itself. The silence remains behind them, but its echo clings still etched into their bones. They know they will never speak freely again, even if their voices are permitted. The throne has claimed not only their bodies, but the sound of their very existence. And so they march onward, hollow now, their steps leading them toward the final stages of their pilgrimage. For they have given up blood, voice, and self, and only one offering remains. The light that greets the pilgrims is unlike anything they have known before. It is not sunlight, nor fire, nor the dim glow of lumen strips. It is a radiance that shimmers across the air like heat over sand, pulsing faintly with each heartbeat of the Imperium itself. The closer they march, the more it sears their skin, not with heat, but with weight, as if illumination itself has substance. Their eyes water, throats burn, and yet they cannot look away, for this is the glow that leaks from the throne's shadow, a pale reflection of a power too vast to be contained. The corridors widen here, expanding into galleries so vast that entire regiments could march abreast within them. Colossal statues line the walls, each depicting saints, martyrs, and nameless figures lost to history. Some are carved in marble so fine it seems translucent, others cast in bronze that glows red under the psychic haze. Their faces are stern, their eyes downcast, each bearing the Imperial aquila upon their breast. To the pilgrims, these statues seem not like art, but like sentinels, watching silently as flesh and blood pass beneath their eternal gaze. But the statues are not alone. At their bases stand custodians in gleaming auramite, halberds angled toward the ground. They do not move, do not speak, yet their presence radiates authority more absolute than any word. The pilgrims know without being told one misstep, one faltering of will, one sign of rebellion, and their journey ends instantly in a flash of golden steel. Yet there is no hatred in the eyes of the custodies, only duty cold and unbreakable. Above, the ceiling is lost in haze. Faint patterns shift across it, runes inscribed in gold and obsidian that seem to move even when one stares directly at them. Some pilgrims swear the runes whisper, each symbol a fragment of prayer in a language no human tongue can form. Others hear nothing, only the throbbing of their own blood in their ears. But all agree that the air itself seems charged, alive with currents of psychic force. Every breath carries not oxygen alone, but fragments of something vaster, heavier, older than worlds. As they march through these galleries, the pilgrims realize they have left the realm of priests and machinery behind. This is no longer the domain of flesh being processed for sacrifice. This is the antechamber of divinity itself, where the throne's light seeps outward like fire beneath a sealed door. And in that glow, every human truth feels smaller. Every sorrow, every prayer, every memory shrinks until it is no more than dust. They are in the shadow of the throne now, and in that shadow, all illusions of self begin to die. The pilgrims advance deeper into the glowing galleries, their senses fraying under the constant pressure of psychic radiance. What began as a shimmer now feels like a storm, invisible currents clawing at their skin, whispering across their nerves. Some feel their teeth ache as if the marrow within is vibrating. Others taste copper and ash with every breath. The air is alive with power, and it does not ask permission to enter their bodies. It forces its way in, filling lungs, flooding veins, burning thought. The statues that line the passage grow stranger the further they march. At first they were clear depictions of saints, warriors, and holy figures, but now their forms begin to blur. Faces stretch into masks of agony or ecstasy, limbs twist in unnatural proportions, wings sprout from shoulders only to dissolve into serpents. The pilgrims avert their eyes, whispering prayers, for though these are holy works sanctioned by the ecclesiarchy, there is something in their shapes that speaks of truths not meant for human minds. Yet the message is clear all the same: to approach the throne is to approach something beyond comprehension, something that unravels the human form. The custodians remain unshaken, their steady steps echoing with mechanical precision. They do not flinch at the shifting statues, nor do they falter under the weight of the radiance. They are as much a part of this place as the stone and the light, guardians fashioned not merely to defend but to endure. To the pilgrims, they seem less like men and more like avatars of inevitability, their very existence a reminder that some can stand in the presence of the throne without breaking, but most cannot. Servitors drag behind the procession massive censer machines, spilling clouds of thick incense that cling to the air in choking waves. The smoke dulls the senses, softens the edges of vision, muffles the psychic burn. Some pilgrims cough, their throats raw, while others cling to the fumes as though they were lifelines, begging the haze to shield them from the light. Priests march beside the censers, swinging chains heavy with smaller braziers, their voices rising in chants that barely pierce the roar of psychic static. The words are ancient, worn smooth by millennia of repetition, but they are not meant to be understood. They are barriers, wards against madness, syllables crafted to keep mortal minds from shattering outright. Still, some break. A man collapses, blood pouring from his nose and ears, his body convulsing in the throes of seizures. A custodian does not hesitate. His halberd arcs down, ending the suffering in a single merciful strike. The pilgrims do not scream. They do not flinch. For all know the truth, those who cannot endure the shadow are not worthy to stand before the throne. And so the procession continues, each step carrying them further into brilliance, further from humanity. The closer they draw, the more the line between body and soul blurs, until even the simple act of existing feels like offering. The galleries narrow once more, funneling the pilgrims into a chamber whose scale beggars belief. It is not a hall in the mortal sense, but a space so immense that the far walls fade into haze, their outlines lost in the glow. Pillars rise like mountains, carved from single blocks of stone that seem to hold the weight of Terra itself. Upon them are etched scenes of sacrifice, millions kneeling, billions burning, rivers of blood flowing into the open hands of the Emperor. Some pilgrims collapse the moment they behold the carvings, unable to bear the scale, the ceaseless insistence that their lives mean nothing except as tributary streams feeding into an infinite ocean. The air is different here. Each breath feels heavier than the last, as though it contains not only oxygen but fragments of something greater, echoes of prayers, shards of souls, the residue of 10,000 years of offering. When the pilgrims inhale, they breathe in the remnants of those who came before, and in exhaling they add their own thread to the tapestry. There is no separation between the living and the dead in this chamber. All are bound by the throne's shadow. And then, without warning, the silence fractures, not with sound in the normal sense, but with resonance, a pulse that vibrates through stone and flesh alike. It is not heard so much as felt, deep in marrow and thought. Some pilgrims cry out though no noise leaves their lips, clutching at their chests, convinced their hearts have been pierced. Others fall to their knees, eyes rolled back, their minds drowning in visions too vast to hold. They see flickers of burning galaxies, endless voids crawling with horrors, the Emperor's form shrouded in golden flame upon the throne. None know if these are truths, lies, or hallucinations, only that they leave the soul seared raw. The custodians react instantly. Their halberds rise in unison, their armor shimmering with fields of protective energy. They stand as shields, not for themselves, but for the Imperium. For if the pilgrims collapse too soon, if they falter before their appointed moment, the flow of sacrifice could be disrupted, and that is unthinkable. Priests scatter into the line, pressing sanctified oils onto foreheads, whispering words of grounding liturgy, forcing the minds of the pilgrims back into their fragile shells. Some recover trembling, their lips still quivering with the aftertaste of visions. Others remain slumped and still, their offering made prematurely. Servitors drag these husks away, ensuring the procession does not slow. The chamber hums again, another pulse passing through it, and then another. The very walls tremble as though alive, as though the palace itself breathes in tandem with the throne. The pilgrims march on, every step carrying them closer to that unseen source of light, every heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of something vaster than worlds. And in the deepest recess of their minds, a truth begins to bloom. They are not merely walking toward the throne, they are walking into it. The chamber narrows into a final corridor, its walls alive with faint golden veins that pulse in rhythm with the unseen throne. The pilgrims no longer stumble or falter, they move as if drawn by a tide too strong to resist. Their exhaustion, their fear, even their individuality seem to have dissolved into the air around them. They are no longer a procession of human beings, but a single stream of flesh, flowing forward to its destined end. At intervals along the corridor, altars of obsidian rise from the floor, each surrounded by priests cloaked in crimson and white. Upon these altars lie relics, fragments of bones, scraps of parchment, scrawled with ink that never fades, shattered pieces of armor said to have once belonged to martyrs. The priests raise these relics high as the pilgrims pass, their chants resonating against the walls. The words are not a plea but a command. Surrender, yield yourself, become nothing so that the emperor may remain everything. Some pilgrims try to resist, clinging desperately to the fragments of memory that still linger in their minds. A mother's smile, a child's laugh, the scent of soil after rain. But each relic, each chant, tears those memories apart. They are not stolen, but drowned beneath the endless weight of the throne's presence. A man collapses, his voice breaking into a sob as he realizes he no longer remembers his own name. A woman laughs, a hollow, delirious sound, as though she has already become more spirit than flesh. None can hold on to themselves for long. The custodians remain steadfast, golden pillars of will that do not waver even as the corridor itself seems to shift. The walls bend, not physically but perceptually, as though space itself recoils from the throne's proximity. Lines twist, angles fracture, shadows crawl where no light falls. Yet the custodians march forward, their presence a reminder that even in the shadow of divinity, discipline and duty remain absolute. And then the corridor opens at last into a vast threshold. Beyond lies light so intense it blinds, a brilliance that bleeds into every pore, erasing shadow, erasing shape, erasing self. The pilgrims halt at the threshold, trembling, their bodies shuddering under the nearness of what awaits. The priests raise their arms, voices rising in a final chorus that drowns thought itself. The custodians spread into formation, their halberds forming a wall of gold. This is the final gate. Beyond it, the throne waits, not as legend, not as rumor, but as searing reality. And as the pilgrims prepare to cross, they know at last that the shadow was mercy compared to what lies ahead. The threshold parts, and light crashes upon the pilgrims like a tidal wave. It is not brilliance in the human sense, not the glow of stars or the blaze of fire, but a radiance that consumes perception itself. To step beyond is to step into a world where sight, sound, and thought collapse into one. Their eyes burn white, their ears throb with static, and their minds convulse with images too vast to belong to them. Yet still they move forward, compelled by a pull that is not physical but absolute. The hall they enter dwarfs all that came before. It is the sanctum of sacrifice, the chamber where countless lives have ended in offering across 10,000 years. Its scale is beyond reckoning. A cathedral so vast that mountains could stand within it unnoticed. Colossal pillars vanish into blinding haze, and the air is a sea of psychic fire, each breath searing the lungs, each heartbeat thundering as though in unison with the galaxy itself. At its center rises the golden throne. Even from this distance, it is impossible to see in full, for the machine is less a structure than a continent of gold and iron. Spires bristle from it like the bones of titans, conduits thicker than city towers pulse with raw energy, and 1,000 bridges lead into its heart. Its sheer enormity is incomprehensible. No pilgrim could measure its height, no mortal could trace the labyrinth of machinery that binds it together. To look upon it is to realize that all the palaces, all the shrines, all the cities of Terra are but dust compared to this single device. The emperor sits within it, His form is distant, obscured by golden fire and the machinery that imprisons him, yet his presence radiates across the hall like the weight of suns. Some pilgrims see him as a figure of light, vast and eternal, his face hidden in brilliance. Others glimpse only a shadowed corpse, shriveled and motionless, kept aloft by the throne's power. Still others see both at once, a paradox their minds cannot reconcile. And perhaps that is the truth of it, that he is both alive and dead, both flame and ash, both salvation and ruin. The custodians kneel as one, their halberds lowered, their armor gleaming brighter than ever in the throne's glow. The priests collapse to the floor, foreheads pressed to stone, their chants breaking into sobs. The servitors halt, their machinery hissing as though even their soulless frames cannot bear the radiance. Only the pilgrims remain standing, though barely, their bodies quivering, their wills stretched to breaking. For they know this is the moment. All the corridors, all the chants, all the silence and suffering have led to this. They are not merely in the presence of the emperor, they are about to be unmade for him. The first pilgrim falls to his knees, not by choice but as though his very bones dissolve beneath the radiance. His body trembles, his mouth moves in soundless prayer, yet what escapes is no prayer at all. It is a scream, ragged and torn, the cry of a soul being wrenched from flesh. His skin cracks like parchment left too long in flame, and light leaks through every fissure. The priests do not rise to aid him, they only sing louder, their voices breaking as if the agony itself is the hymn required. The second staggers forward, reaching out as though he could touch the throne across the impossible distance. He whispers words that none can hear, words perhaps only the emperor receives, before his body arches back violently. His spine snaps in a single motion, yet no blood flows. Instead, a column of brilliance erupts from within him, rising into the vaulted air and vanishing into the throne's hungry light. What remains crumples silently to the ground, a husk robbed not only of life, but of essence itself. Each pilgrim falls in turn, their ends differing, yet all united in finality. Some simply collapse, their eyes empty and their bodies brittle as dust. Others burst into fire that consumes without smoke, leaving only drifting ashes that vanish before touching the floor. A few disintegrate entirely, their forms scattering as radiant motes that race into the conduits of the machine. None leave corpses in the way mortals understand, none leave identities. They are consumed wholly, utterly, until not even memory lingers except as a note in the great chord that sustains the Astronomicon. The custodians do not move, their golden helms bow in eternal silence, guardians who have seen this countless times and yet never intervene. The priests howl prayers that warp into incoherence, their litany collapsing into pure sound, more animal than human. And the servitors, though made of wires and steel, twitch as though shaken by unseen tides, their augmetics sparking with the overload of proximity to divinity. But the pilgrims themselves, those chosen vessels of this offering, do not resist. They cannot. Perhaps deep within, a part of them welcomes it, having lived their entire lives, knowing this was their fate. Perhaps they believe their deaths will echo forever in the Emperor's light. Or perhaps they are too overwhelmed to even think, their final thoughts stripped away like the rest of them, dissolved into something vaster. The chamber grows still as the last of them is unmade. Silence follows, but it is not absence, it is fullness. The throne hums deeper now, its conduits alive with fresh streams of radiance, the Astronomicon strengthened for another span of hours, days, weeks. Across the void of the galaxy, starships feel the renewed beacon, a subtle surge guiding them through the Imperium, never knowing the cost of the light they follow. In the sanctum, the sacrifice is over, but the presence of the Emperor does not recede. It lingers heavier, as though in acknowledgement or in hunger, yet unsated. Where the pilgrims once stood, there is nothing. Not even ash marks their passing. The sanctum floor is bare, smooth, and untouched, as though their very existence was erased from matter itself. Only the echo of their final cries lingers in the minds of those who remain, a haunting resonance that may not fade for hours, or perhaps never at all. The priests collapse forward, their strength finally broken, their throats raw and bleeding from the force of their chants. Some faint outright, their bodies twitching in exhaustion. Others fall into sobs, faces pressed into the cold stone, whispering fragments of prayers as though trying to assure themselves that their service mattered. The custodians rise slowly, as though drawn upward by unseen strings. They move in perfect silence, each step deliberate, measured, and impossibly heavy with finality. Their halberds gleam in the throne's glow, catching fragments of the lingering radiance as they take their positions once more. Their movements carry no ceremony, no flourish, only inevitability, for they know the ritual will repeat, and their duty is eternal. The servitors begin their tasks, their mechanical limbs hissing as they cleanse the chamber of what little disruption remains. Brass arms sweep across the polished floor, not to collect remains. There are none but to reset the space for the next procession. Their work is automatic, mechanical, yet it carries a strange reverence, as though even soulless constructs understand that they are tending to the residue of divinity. The chamber itself seems altered, its vast silence deeper, its light more unstable, flaring with sudden bursts before settling again into steady radiance. Some who witness it whisper that this is the Emperor's acknowledgement, a sign that he has accepted the offering. Others insist it is only the fluctuations of the throne's machinery, a reminder that even this eternal engine is but a machine, groaning under the weight of millennia. Both explanations linger in the minds of the priests as they force themselves upright, neither wholly convincing, neither entirely deniable. And so the pilgrims are gone, their souls consumed by a being who has not spoken in 10,000 years, their lives extinguished not with ceremony but with necessity. Yet in that necessity lies meaning. Ships will sail the void, armies will march across the stars. Humanity will endure for another day, and the price of that endurance is written here, in this chamber of silence, in the erasure of those who were chosen. For a heartbeat, the sanctum feels impossibly still, as though all of Terra holds its breath. Then the silence breaks. Deep within the golden throne, a low hum reverberates, the sound of the Astronomicon reignited, its beams stretching out into the Imperium. Across the galaxy, psychers awaken from nightmares with the sudden clarity of light, and navigators feel the stars align in their inner sight. None will know the names of the dead who lit their path, none will remember their faces, but all will follow the road carved from their annihilation. The priests rise slowly from the floor, their bodies bent as though permanently shaped by the weight of the moment. Their faces are streaked with blood from ruptured vessels, their lips torn and raw from the force of their litanies. They know their work is done, yet none dare to speak aloud. To shatter the silence after such a sacrifice feels like blasphemy itself. Only the faint scraping of their sandals echoes as they shuffle backward, never turning their backs to the throne, withdrawing step by careful step until they return to the shadow of the pillars. The custodians remain. They stand unmoving, eternal statues clad in living gold, their helms locked forward upon the Emperor's form. They betray nothing, not the faintest gesture of reverence, grief, or satisfaction. And yet the weight of their presence speaks louder than words. They have seen this rite countless times, witnessed the obliteration of more souls than entire worlds hold, yet each offering binds them tighter to the oath they swore in ages long forgotten. They do not weep, but in their silence lies an acknowledgement deeper than mourning. This is the price, and it must be paid. High above the throne groans. The sound is not mechanical, not merely the turning of ancient gears or the surge of titanic conduits. It is the sound of something vaster, a vibration that resonates through the marrow, as though the galaxy itself has exhaled. Some who hear it swear it is the Emperor answering, his will expressed not in words but in weight, a pressure upon the soul that says only continue. Others dismiss it as the echoes of overstrained machinery, as impersonal as thunder. Both truths sit side by side, unresolvable, each as terrible as the other. Far across Terra, unseen by those who served and died in this chamber, the consequences ripple outward. The light of the Astronomicon strengthens, burning through the howling tides of the Imperium. Imperial ships correct their courses, guided once more by the unbroken flame. On distant battlefields, generals receive the clarity of orders they thought lost. Astropaths weeping as the psychic channels stabilize again. The Imperium breathes because the pilgrims no longer do. And in the sanctum, the light steadies. The great act is complete. Yet the void left in its wake lingers, as though the chamber itself remembers the vanished lives. It will not last. Soon the next procession will come, led by the same golden guardians, heralded by the same chants, bound for the same silence. And the cycle will continue without end until the throne finally breaks or the Emperor himself is no more. The priests lower their heads and depart. The servitors withdraw into alcoves, folding back into the walls as though they never existed. The custodians alone remain in their unbroken vigil, their halberds crossed before the throne, while behind them lies only emptiness. Where moments ago there were pilgrims, there is now nothing but polished stone, gleaming faintly beneath the impossible radiance of the golden throne. Outside the sanctum, the pilgrims who never reach the end wait in endless chambers, still chanting, still hoping, still dreaming that their time will come. They do not know that others have already walked the final path and been erased. To them, the cycle has no beginning and no end. They hear the bells toll in the deep corridors and mistake them for progress, never realizing they are only echoes of rituals already concluded. Faith shields them from the truth. Faith keeps them from despair. For if they understood the speed with which the Emperor consumes his chosen, they might question why they themselves linger still. Above the sanctum, the endless machinery of the throne rumbles on, its conduits brightened by the fresh fuel of human souls. Vast wings of gold unfold and shudder, releasing waves of psychic energy that no mortal eye can see, yet all psychers across Terra feel. Some collapse under its weight, frothing at the mouth, while others sink into trances, scribbling prophecies they themselves cannot understand. To be near the Emperor's pulse is to risk madness, but it is also to glimpse eternity. Whispers carry through the priesthood, words they dare not commit to record. Some claim that within the sacrifice, fragments of the Emperor stir, that he draws strength not only to guide ships, but to tether his mind to what remains of humanity. Others insist he is gone, long since dead, and that what is sustained is only the echo of his power, a machine burning ghosts to keep the galaxy's night at bay. Both interpretations are heresy. Both are clung to with desperate faith. In the quiet aftermath, a single truth remains. The pilgrims are gone, but the Imperium lives. The Astronomicon shines, cutting through the warp's darkness like a blade of fire, and across 1,000,000 worlds humanity moves forward, unaware of the price paid in silence. The Emperor remains enthroned, radiant and withered, savior and prison both. His worshippers vanish without trace, their existence folded into his endless burden. And so the cycle endures. Pilgrims will be gathered, hymns will be sung. The throne will feed, the Imperium will breathe. It has been so for 10,000 years, and it will remain so until the final ember of humanity dies in the void. or until the Emperor himself ceases to burn. In the sanctum beneath the weight of eternal gold, silence reigns once more,